And we are kicking off live with 30 Food Safety with Dr. John Butts, where we're interviewing the brightest minds in food safety. So, Dr. John, thanks for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you.
And would love to kick off and just hear, how'd you get into food safety?
Part of my job was food safety when I started in the industry back in the 70s. We didn't know it as such, but in our industry, in the meat industry, our days of reckoning with environmental pathogens came in the late 90s.
Hmm.
In 2000, I formally created that department within Land of Frost, the company I worked for. And at that point, we needed not only a quality person in each plant, but a food safety manager in each of our plants. So QA needed to audit, design, test, qualify processes. They needed a strong statistical ability. Food safety, on the other hand, needed microbiology, sanitation, engineering skills, team management. Now, in a plant setting, they should back up one another.
Yeah.
But when the food safety manager and the quality manager walked into the plant manager's office, which one is he going to listen to? What actions are he going to take? So the food safety definitely has had a changing role over the years. I think my classic example of that is in the early, right after 2000, I got heavily engaged into the food safety arena in microbiology and sanitation. Was fortunate to have Russell Flowers, who owned Silica at the time, as my mentor for microbiology. I was showing up at our plants like at 1 or 2 in the morning and had the opportunity to work with one of our sanitation managers who was simply a supervisor on rotation through the various departments. And this young man had been in the sanitation role now for a few months. And I came quickly to realize that he didn't really completely understand what he needed to know. So
Hmm.
we started working together those early morning hours into the mid late morning, and at that point in time, I had a PhD microbiologist in that plant as the food safety manager, and he left, and Matt Henderson, the gentleman who was uh, out of school and going through the various supervisory departments, told me he wanted to get into food safety. And I said, Matt, that's fantastic. We'd love to have you, because at this point in time, Matt had done all the dirty work that we have to do in sanitation of taking things apart. And, just he had real hardcore firsthand experience of finding harborage sites and knowing what to do about it. So I said, Matt, that'd be great. The only problem we have is you got to get an education. Matt had a BS degree from Arkansas State, a local school there, but he needed to understand more of the science. So
Hmm.
I'm proud to say that Matt has taken my place at Land of Frost, now a VP, and finishing up his PhD at this point in time.
Wow.
So he has truly lived that whole food safety situation. So back in 2000, we had microbiologists and QA people, but that's when we really started developing food safety as a profession.
Wow. And for you, because you come from an academic background, and you said you maybe wanted to get out and get some real stories. What made you take the jump into from academia into manufacturing?
Well, again, my goal had always been to be director of research of a company, and at that point in time, that was typically, we're talking in the 60s and 70s now, early 70s. I interviewed with Armour and Company after my master's degree, and I asked the question, what's the chance of me becoming a director of research for Armour and Company? And the interviewers was very honest with me, said none. You've got to have a PhD. Well, that was pretty easy. We loaded up the old GTO and a U-Haul and headed to Purdue.
And been a Boilermaker ever since. I see you're still wearing the gear.
That's right.
That's great. Well, would love to hear for you, what have been some of the challenges you've faced in your career? I know you've specialized in listeria, but what, as you're looking back, from that time to now, what are some of the biggest challenges that jump to mind?
Well, I think clearly during my tenure in industry, it's finding the right people. Uh,
Hmm.
Finding people that have a passion and clarity of understanding risk. I was very, very fortunate to work for, in the end, a privately held company. Paul Van Ekeren, the owner of the company, second generation owner, hired me, and I worked for him throughout basically his life. And I was fortunate to have a roundabout with a fellow student at Purdue who was in graduate school. And after that, when I was in industry about a year, I was having some difficulty in people management. So I hired Chuck Niematowski. He had
Hmm.
people management skills. So he started out as a QA manager in our plant. Ultimately, Chuck became president of the company.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so it was really fun working with somebody who was president of the company that ran a micro lab before. So
Yeah.
that was really something. He had been with R.J. Reynolds, and we hired him from there. Also, able to find people. Bill Marion was a classic. He had been with a master's out of Kansas State, my other alumni, and Bill was with Oscar at the time, and he joined as tech services manager in one of our plants. And he ultimately became VP of operations. So we had built a team based on finding the right folks who really clearly understood our business. And
Yeah.
so it made it easy for us to transition into having that strong food safety culture. And that really helped me a tremendous amount. Now, as a consultant, some of my biggest challenges are simply getting follow through of some of the preventive and predictive concepts that we have.
Yeah. What did you learn from Chuck as far as when it comes to people management, on the micro, like with more food safety or lab folks? What did you learn from him, seeing what he did so well? Any specific stories or principles that he abided by?
I think the key was we fed off of one another, and when it came to making those major decisions that we had to make in running a business, we understood each other's values. And I think building those values together with, all of those folks that we worked with and for uh, really, really helped us. So I think I think a lot of it is values based. We all have to have the same values.
Yeah. And is that why maybe it's a challenge when you're going as a consultant in and you're like, okay, there's not the same values. Maybe the food safety culture isn't built out what yet. Is that what some of the struggle is as far as implementing some of the things that you guys talk about and discuss?
Absolutely, and that is, uh, I think, a very serious issue in our industry. Is company values.
Yeah. What do you see as you've looked under the hood at lots of different companies? Like, what do you see the solution is for that as far as food safety culture goes or values? When some people are like, hey, we just want to sell more product or keep production running, and then obviously food safety comes first. What do you see as like the solution to that?
Well, when I'm interviewing a potential client, if one of the questions I typically am going to ask is, what keeps you awake at night? And, Patty, if I don't get the right answer, they're not a client.
Yeah.
It's that simple. We have to understand the importance of food safety, because every ounce, every gram of product we produce is going to be consumed, and it has to be consumed safely.
Yeah. What are some wrong answers you hear, and then what's the right answer?
Well, the wrong answer is fire, uh, you know, plant burning down. I mean, that's not a bad answer, but it's just not really understanding what it takes in a business to make food safe product.
Yeah.
And do they have a passion for it? And I've had many CEOs that I've worked with that they're almost there, but they haven't. They just haven't. They don't understand it enough to go all the way. And that's where we teach food safety culture to help them get there. And I've become a big fan of food safety culture. Uh, Years ago, we developed the concept of awareness, enlightenment, preventive, and predictive as a way of measuring our clients and customers. And that has been the foundation of my consulting business.
Wow. Anything looking back over your career that were maybe some mistakes as far as the food safety culture goes? Because I think that's like, a big buzzword now. People are talking about it. Looking back, any mistakes that you wish you'd done a better job on?
Not being able to cause more change rapidly.
Yeah.
I was too slow in thinking through how to effectively communicate risk and preventive practices. And I still am challenged with that today. I mean, the risk is there, and we know the preventive practices. Take listeria, for example. We've been working on that for what, 35, 40 years now.
Yeah.
We through AMI, the American Meat Institute, at the time in 2000, we created the Listeria Workshop. Uh, we did the task forces for sanitary design at both facility and one of equipment. Those are fundamental concepts that are based on best practices, which in FDA's now is preventive controls. We know the preventive controls and best practices to manage listeria in our business. And we found that many other trade organizations and commodities basically have adopted those task force principles and guidelines. So we know what works. It's just getting that follow through.
Yeah. So your regret is not conveying it in a way where people can act on it as quickly as possible.
We have to take some responsibility there. I mean, it, it it's not rocket science. It's really simple stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Anything, jumping back, like on the Listeria side, anything that you feel like is a real Hall of Fame moment? You mentioned a few of those, the task force, seek and destroy, root cause, are things you spent a lot of time on. What for you, looking back, are you, is your Hall of Fame moment?
Well, Hall of Fame moment. Frankly, being inducted into the Meat Industry Hall of Fame in 2020, my Hall of Fame moment.
A literal Hall of Fame moment.
That was very, very, very rewarding to me personally. But no, I think seeing the term "seek and destroy" being recognized as a validated method for environmental pathogen control has been one of those. Again, team that we had in 1992 developed the term seek and destroy. It was a team that we had in our Searcy, Arkansas facility. Don Morrow was, this was before QA, this was before food safety. Don Morrow was our QA manager, and it was something that we had to do. We had to go out in that plant and find the listeria and destroy it and get rid of it. So he came up with that phrase, and we've used that ever since. So I think it's well recognized that that's the practice that is really the valid way of managing pathogen control. So
Yeah.
the other is seeing success of those I've mentored and worked with over the years. That's just great to see those successes.
Absolutely. Well, you are a thought leader amongst thought leaders, because we had John Rady on here from Nestle, we had Sharon on here, and they both said they wanted to hear from you. So you certainly mentored people, and people look up to you in the space for sure. But that is the first true Hall of Fame moment that we've had. So you knocked that one out of the park. Anything top of mind for you right now? Like, would you say, what's your hottest take in food safety? What are things that maybe people don't agree with you on, but you think are really important?
Well, I've been consulting now since 2010. I was very fortunate to be able to have an extended succession period at Land O'Frost before basically now Matt has taken over. So I was consulting part-time with the owner of the company, David Van Ecker, now being the person who I could reference for, because in our industry, we feel that food safety is non-competitive. We want to share best practices.
Yeah.
So as a consultant, I would be in with a client, and you're there because there's problems in most cases that need to be addressed, and sometimes they're pretty serious problems.
Yeah.
What really, really got me was a QA manager, a food safety manager say, well, no, you can't come back in a month because I'm preparing for an audit.
Hmm.
Now that don't settle well here. Just because you can get an excellent GFSI audit score doesn't mean you're producing food safe product.
Yeah. So you didn't love that he was like, hey, I'm not going to take care of this food safety issue. I'm going to prep for the audit.
Yeah. We're seeing too many empty boxes getting checked in our industry. And as food safety leaders, we have to be responsible for that and make sure that we have made those practices ingrained within our business. A food safety or quality manager should not be the person who is talking to that GFSI auditor.
Hmm.
They need to be there to introduce, they need to be there in the closing, but folks, we gotta hand it down to those who are really doing it. That's production, that's maintenance, that's sanitation. They're the ones who are really doing it. We just have to make sure that they're doing it right, and they know the right things to do, and that we have an internal audit that assures us that that's happening. So I think the other thing is, and it really, really leads to this, is compliance versus raising the bar. So if I get a great score on an audit, that means I'm complying with those needs. If I don't have any regulatory issues, if we're satisfying the regulatory needs, and we're in compliant. Well, when we look at food safety culture, compliance, we have, Lone Jesperson taught me that we have doubt before we have awareness.
Hmm.
So somewhere in that later doubt to early awareness stage is where compliance is at. Just because we're compliant doesn't mean that we're doing what we really should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's raising the bar. It when we're in compliance, many plants are firefighting.
Yep.
The way that we get out of firefighting is developing and implementing those preventive controls and predictive processes. So as we go through awareness and then into enlightenment, in enlightenment, we learn what our real root causes are, and we learn how to identify them. It's when we get to the preventive stage that we learn what to do about them.
Yeah.
So these are risks we're talking about. How do we manage those risks? We can redesign them out of the system. That's the best way of doing it. If you got a piece of equipment that's simply not cleanable, then don't try to clean it. Get it the hell out of the plant, and let's get something in that really works.
Yeah.
So when we get to the predictive state, we're now using data to drive those preventive practices. And it's amazing when you get data that enable you to do that. Variation goes down, risk goes down, profits go up.
Yeah.
So, it's really pretty simple stuff. So, and all of that comes in with food safety culture. So I think food safety culture has to be recognized. And as Frank Yanis says, your job isn't writing a report. It's promoting and developing a food safety culture. That's not a direct quote, but that's really what we have to do. We have to recognize that culture.
I want to back up a little bit because I think it's worth pausing. You said that the the director of food safety quality, you see their role as more of raising the bar of food safety and quality, less so on the meeting compliance. Because at Alera, we sell to a lot of food safety quality people. Like 90% of what they think about is when's the audit coming, when's the customer audit, when's the third party audit. So I guess why do you think we've gotten to a point where compliance is on food safety quality shoulders, not production, not maintenance, not sanitation?
Well, I think many of our food safety and quality folks want to be measured, and this is a measurement system.
Yeah.
And by golly, if I can't get the team to do it, I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
I read an interesting piece this morning on Caitlin Clark, the basketball star with Indiana Fever, and her coach at Iowa read a book by Phil on Michael Jordan that Phil wrote. And living in the Chicago area, obviously the Bulls back in the Jordan days, it was just phenomenal. And she learned so much by her coach teaching her from the Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan situation. So I think a lot of that process goes into how we manage and how we manage our teams. I think one of the first things is get to know who your number one team is and work with your number one team. And most people in our technical area think that number one team are those folks that work for them, and it's not. Your number one team are those peers and leaders above you whom you work with to pave the road and clear that road for those who work for you to succeed. So your success is based on their success.
Yeah. So it's setting up others to succeed in the plant.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess on that note, like you talked about, checking the box for compliance things versus actually keeping food safe. You kind of tipped your hand here, but it sounds like you're saying food safety culture is the answer to make it where plants are more focused on food safety, more focused on raising the bar than on compliance. What have you seen work well? I think of like if you're just a QA manager or a food safety manager in a plant, how would you even start thinking about food safety culture?
Number one, understanding the values of the organization. First and foremost, make sure you understand the values of the company you're going to work for. Can
Yep.
you accept, live, and promote those values? If not, you're in the wrong place.
Get out.
So we've got to be value driven. Our culture has to be value driven. And so that I think is that's the foundation. Food safety was clearly the foundation of our business in food production. If we can't get that right, then frankly we have no business being in that business.
Yeah. I think that's obviously a great thing to strive for is aligning with values. I think sometimes people are like, hey, I need a job. I'm in between, I'm in a certain area, and then maybe they end up taking a role where the CEO doesn't really have the food safety values that they need. What would you say to those people that are maybe not aligned with values in their facility? Are you
Well,
saying, hey, get out as soon as you can, or is it, you got to put food on the table sometimes?
well, you need some humble thoughts with yourself. I had a situation where I went into a plant. It was an FDA facility, and I got there about a day after FDA had taken up residence, and I was going over, what needed to be done one evening with the CEO, and he made the statement that, well, we got a excellent on our SQF score. What the blank more do they want from me? And, I did my best to get him engaged with folks who clearly understood what he needed to do as CEO. And he didn't listen, and the company never came in operation after that.
Wow.
A few months after that, I got a email wanting the QA manager, the technical person, wanted a recommendation of me for them to get a job somewhere.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Yeah. Got it. So almost as a quality food safety person, it's like being in the room, you being in the room with values that aren't aligned with food safety, it can hurt your career.
That is correct. And, likewise, a good food safety leader has to be able to take charge of that room at the appropriate time and know when to do it and to do it.
Yeah. We had Brian Armentrout on, and he said, that he told the CEO once when there was a recall, he's like, this isn't your company anymore, and now it's mine. And I think that, I don't think that would land well with a lot of CEOs, but I think that food safety does have a duty in the role that maybe doesn't land the same way in other parts of the food space.
I've certainly been in that position, and it's not my company, it's to get out of my way.
Yeah.
They did it.
Yeah, I mean, lives are on the line. I think it's, you can think about procedures, you can think about the money, the product waste, whatever, but lives are on the line for sure.
I once had a CFO that was not really understanding some of the things we needed to do. And fortunately, I had been involved with some really, really good Washington lawyers. And one of them was Rick Frank of Olson, Frank and Weta. And Rick, not a real tall guy, but he certainly had the ability, being of his background in New York or Brooklyn or wherever it was, being able to hold his own in a tough crowd. And
Yeah.
So I get our CFO on the phone with Rick, and it was funny when it was over. I mean, humble pie had been cooked and eaten by the CFO.
We need more New Yorkers in food safety.
Rick knew how to talk to him so that he would listen.
Yeah. That's awesome. I guess for you, what you talked about what keeps CEOs up at night. What keeps you up at night in the food safety world these days?
I'm sorry.
What keeps you up at night in food safety world these days?
Oh, I think again, getting those concepts across. What could I do better to
Yeah.
to cause that change that I think we need to be we need to happen. Never be satisfied. I'm never satisfied. You gotta set high expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for you, if you could give one piece of advice to next generation of food safety leaders, what do you think it would be and why?
Well, first is those company values. Get in a plant, get your hands dirty. Find a mentor to help you transition into the real world, and make data and science drive your efforts.
Yeah, that's great. And then just since you've talked about it in the past, um, how do you think about the jungle these days for food safety and quality, the novel?
Well, at the turn of the century, I gave that presentation to every one of our employees at the company, and I really think that there's some great inspiration there to do the right thing. I was fortunate in doing that. We had I think it was a Serbian young lady that was working for us that spoke in that dialect that they had. And so I had her record some of the passages out of that book, and it was a very, very powerful presentation.
Yeah, it resonates still today for people.
Yeah.
Got it. Would you say it's should it's required reading for food safety and quality folks?
I think it should be. Unfortunately, we I've been in some facilities that I think the ownership needs to read that book too.
Yeah, aren't too far off. And it is like, you know, I think it was published like 100 years ago, and it's still relevant for some folks. That's great. Well, awesome. Well, I guess last question is, if you could see anyone get interviewed on 30 food safety, who would you like to see and why?
Well, I think Cliff Coles would be a great one because Cliff is just a tremendous amount of microbiological experience. I truly enjoy working with him. And I think Cliff's ability to understand practical, real problems and how to solve them is far beyond almost everybody in the food safety business.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to track them down.
Okay,
Great. Well, thanks, Dr. Butts. We appreciate it, and we loved hearing all your journey in food safety.
thank you.